I think we have everybody in the meeting now. Looks like we're ready to roll.
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining our monthly webinar series. Tonight's title is The Power of Purpose, helping individuals with dementia continue to experience meaning and joy. Our program will be recorded and can be found on our Anthem YouTube channel in the coming week. Please keep your cameras and microphones off until our Q&A portion, at which time you can type your questions in the chat. We are delighted to bring to you a legend in dementia training, Dr. Tam Cummings. Dr. Tam, as she is known in the dementia community, is a practicing gerontologist who has devoted her professional career to educating both professionals and family caregivers. In 2009, she founded the Dementia Association with a mission to inspire, educate, and empower dementia caregivers. At Anthem, we utilize her transformative work, including the Itty Bitty Dementia book, in our daily conversations with families of those with dementia. If you have not already received your copy of the Itty Bitty Dementia book, you can find one at your nearest Anthem community. Families, professionals, and caregivers, it is an honor to once again present to you Dr. Tam.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Anthem Memory Care. This is a brand new presentation for me in terms of how we're going to do this tonight, and this whole idea came about from the team at Anthem. So thank you guys. I think this is an incredibly important thing to talk about. So here we go. First of all, you need to understand that people with dementia need purpose. All human beings need purpose, and even somebody with brain disease still needs to have purpose in their life. And caregivers, when you look at the research, it's not just the person with dementia that we're looking at in terms of the purpose of care, but it's also what it does to the caregiver, to the family caregiver. As a caregiver, you've had to focus on the present and being there in that moment and deal at the same time with the grief of someone that you love slowly going away from you. You've helped someone that you love and care about. And my homework is always that as a caregiver, you need to write down all you've done so that you can see that what you've done has had meaning and purpose. It gives you a chance to reflect and spend time together when your loved one's at Anthem without you having to be the actual caregiver. So you can go back to doing things that involve you and your loved one, maybe a favorite hobby, maybe some music, dancing. Um, you can always bring a tasty treat to share. If I'm in the community, I'll happily come eat with you. And time together with less stress is possible because your loved one's care is being done by someone else. And so that's very important for you as part of surviving this journey. One of the other things for you as the caregiver is in that purpose, also finding gratitude. If you can find a way to be grateful for 3 things every day, in 27 days, your autoimmune system begins to boost. And that's something that we know that's important for our family caregivers because you do just exhaust yourself. So our folks with dementia need purpose, and our caregivers, you guys need purpose too. But first, we've got to have a little brain physiology and some understanding of brain function. And so you're going to be the first group that I've really tried this set out with. I've had this idea for a while to use as an explanation, so I'll be looking for feedback from anybody that this was helpful. The dendrites are the roots that grow on the neuron, the cell body. And as you age, as you have more education, or you may have a higher intellect than other people, the experiences that you've had, the hobbies that you've had, the things that you've loved to do, vacations, that cruise ship, that trip to Africa, that trip to the other side of your state, your staycation, your family, your personality, your work, your passions. As you learn each of those things, the dendrite got a little bit bigger until finally the dendrite is what is holding your knowledge. And it's not that it's one neuron with a dendrite. It's 100 billion neurons with dendrites. And those dendrites, that growth in the root of the brain neuron, is where knowledge is. It's where memory is. It's where what makes you exist. Chris, did that make sense?
It did.
Okay. Now, the dendrites grow over your lifetime. There is no moment where your brain stops making new brain cells. There's no moment where your brain stops learning. And those dendrites get really, really big by the time a person gets into their 8th or 9th or 10th decade of life, which is somebody in their 90s. So by the time a person is in their 90s, the average person's brain is very thick and rich with dendritic growth because of the years that every time they learned something new in that branch of dendrites, that group of roots, you got another pearl added. You got another piece of information added. So I want you to think of the dendrites as being a pearl necklace. Okay? As time goes on in your life, your necklace keeps getting bigger and bigger as you learn more and more things. For example, most of you are probably parents. I've never been a parent. I've never had a child. So you have dendritic growth in neurons in areas of your brain that I simply don't have because I don't have those experiences. Does that make sense to you, Chris?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Now, over time, as you age and as you, whoops, I went in the wrong direction. As you age, your, hold on. Okay. So as you age and you learn new things, you meet new people, you make new people, you have babies, grandbabies, great grandchildren. Each experience that the hippocampus determines it wants to keep, that it's something you need in your brain, it adds it to the dendrites. And so you get another pearl on the end of that root. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Okay. Now, neurons don't die in a few seconds, Chris. And I think this is something that not only are we really starting to begin to understand this, but it's something that we can share with families. These neurons, and you started with 100 billion of them, they don't die in seconds. They take years to die. And they die in the backward fashion that the information was learned. That's why my mother doesn't remember the great grandchild, but when she sees the great grandchild, she thinks that's one of her children because she's lost enough of the pearls of knowledge on her dendrites. She's lost enough dendritic growth that piece of her brain no longer has memory of those others because those memories are gone. Did that make sense?
It does.
I keep waiting for you, Chris, to go, no, not really, Tam, do that again. And the memory isn't just on one set of dendrites. And so that's why my mother may actually know me in this moment. I can tell by looking in her eyes. Her eyes are clear and she knows it's me. She's here in this moment. But then that connection gets lost as another pearl dies, another dendrite, another root, and finally the neuron itself dies until finally none of those memories that have to do with that specific thing exist anymore. So eventually my mother couldn't drive a car because she wouldn't understand all the things she needed to do because the pieces of the brain that did that dendritic growth, that root, they don't exist anymore. Does that make sense?
Sure does.
So as the dendrites go away, as they begin to die, that's why the disease takes years. And so family members may be forgotten or may be incorrectly identified. They're not trying to be cruel or rude. Those memories aren't there. They're doing the best they can. And so the losses are progressive, they're predictable. We understand based on the type of dementia a person has how the disease will move through the brain. But still, as humans, even with this disease happening, we need to have purpose. Now, finally, the neuron dies. And when the neuron dies, Chris, it's removed from the body in waste at night when the brain cleans itself. And that tiny microscopic speck where that neuron lived is now taken over by a speck of cerebral spinal fluid. And as the disease progresses and there's less and less brain tissue, there's more and more cerebral spinal fluid until finally the brain is floating in that. Okay, so massive muscle tissue brain tissue loss has to occur before the person looks sick. But even then, there is so much memory and function that still remains. So real quick, I want to segue over here, Chris, because more and more I'm getting calls about what does normal atrophying brain actually mean? And that ties into what we're talking about, because when they do an MRI of the brain and they come back and tell you, Chris, you have a normal atrophying brain, and that scares the bejeebers out of you, and you think, oh my gosh, I've got it now too. What they didn't do was take an MRI of your knee to tell you you have a normal atrophying left knee. They didn't take a MRI of your kidneys to tell you you have normal atrophying kidneys. They didn't take an MRI of your lungs to tell you you have normal atrophying lungs. After we reach our early and mid 30s, the body begins to age, and it ages at a percentage per year, depending upon what you've done to your body. Do you live a hard life or do you treat your body well? And it depends on not so much genetics, it's really what you've done with your life, what you're doing. So normal atrophying brain is no different than normal atrophying kidneys. It means that when I get into my 80s, my brain still functions. It's a little bit atrophied the same way my kidneys are, but it's not anything that I'm worried about, Chris, cognitively, because my brain started at above 100%. And you know that because you and I both know that in order for a person with dementia to look physically sick, they actually have to lose 1/3 of their brain. So the brain is operating above its capacity. So don't be worried about terms like normal atrophying brain. It's just that they should have followed up with, you've also got a normal atrophying bladder. Okay. So does that make sense?
It does.
Okay. Now, what is purposeful engagement? It's a skill set in a lot of ways, and it takes a lot of practice and thinking and planning on the part of the caregivers around your person. We have to remember always their reality is your reality. It's my reality. Everything they are doing, Chris, they're doing with a damaged brain. They're doing the best they can. The brain doesn't realize it's damaged. Remember, that's called anosognosia. So the more you point out something they're doing wrong, the more you annoy them. And so we don't do activities like that. Purposeful engagement means providing activities and an environment that increases self-esteem and makes a person feel useful. And that's actually one of the benefits and bonuses of memory care, is that is exactly what it's doing. It is putting the person in a place where they can be successful. There's not the constant questioning. Caregivers are not angry, upset, exhausted. The environment, we're watching to see if the music gets too loud or if somebody needs to go off and be in a quiet area. And so you have to remember that even as you see loss in your loved one, even as we see loss, and when we see even great cognitive loss, the final stages of the disease, we know that people with dementia still need to have a purpose, even if it's helping me water a plant. It is a human construct. It's a human need that we have. And even if you just help me water a plant, and that may even involve that your hand is over my hand while I hold the watering can, It increases the self-esteem of the person. It makes them feel useful. And humans have a need to be useful. And it's something that we can forget about because we can get so focused, Chris, on all the loss in that loved one that we can stop looking for the nuggets that are still there where memory is still function. People with dementia need socialization and structure, and that is a key ingredient of Anthem's dementia care. They're doing things in a very evidence-based manner, in a very structured manner, and in a very socialized manner. They actually follow a social medical model. The medical model is the nurses are there and the doctors come there, and even mobile x-ray can come to the community. And the socialization model is so critical that people will move their loved one in and then come back and tell the staff that you've cured them. They're so much better now. What have you done? It's magic. And the magic is that we're doing socialization all day long. You have to remember that even with brain damage, your loved one still has personal interest in their brain. I had a lady once, Chris, that loved the Lone Ranger, the original Lone Ranger and Tonto show that came on, I think on Saturdays. And it was back when we had VHS, and we could only find 3 episodes of it. But every single day she watched her 3 episodes of the Lone Ranger, and she was happy and loved it because it was a memory she had that was still in her brain, and it was from when she was a little girl. When we think about doing things with purpose in dementia, we also have to look at the life skills of the person. And Chris, these are just a few that I came up with just thinking about it. Cooking, and that can be stirring the milk in to make pudding, but it can also be helping to serve cookies or drinks to other people that are around me. Painting, drawing, reading. It can sound odd, but folding clothes or sorting socks is actually very soothing to people with dementia. Music, but it needs to be music that they like. Remember, Chris, the lady that brought her mother in from Mexico City? I went to visit and she was playing classical music for her mother. And I said, "Oh, your mother likes classical music. How wonderful. What is she listening to now?" And the daughter said, "Oh, she hates it." And I said, why are you playing it? And she said, "Well, I read that classical music was good for a dementia brain." And yes, classical music is good, but not if you don't like it, Chris. Don't make me listen to music I don't want to like. Washing dishes, drying dishes. You may see us doing things like that with your loved one. They're not really doing community dishes. They're doing normal, familiar tasks that help them feel useful. A common thing is you might see somebody with a cloth. Looks like they're cleaning the dining tables and they're just doing normal household human tasks. Your person may have loved building and making things, carving, woodcraft stuff, pottery. It's important that we continue to engage with children, dogs, our pets. That's why those are in the community. They come and visit. They sometimes stay a little bit longer. Reading, and as the disease progresses, if I know my mother loved reading this particular book or a chapter in the Bible or whatever it was, if I knew she loved doing that, I can continue to do that with her and for her. We forget about photo albums. We've now got the machine that'll just keep scrolling pictures, but that can be confusing to a person with dementia. So you might want to go back to the photo albums. And sitting and watching a photo, looking at a photo album, that's old memory. That makes more sense than a screen that's flashing pictures by at a rate that I may not even be able to really see them. Make memory boxes. Now, memory boxes it can be a Tupperware box, it can be a shoe box, it can be whatever it is, but it's stuff of your loved one's life that you know they'll like. Colorful things, fun things, might have some seashells in it, might have a little container that's got beach sand in it because of something you went to the beach, and then a little bottle of lotion, suntan oil because of that coconut smell. You can get big yarn, and again, you're looking for big, thick, soft, and make different kind of knots that are not tight, but different types of knots. Playing cards, and you can invest and get playing cards that have bigger numbers and brighter colors because that's also a stimulation. Gentle massage, and I don't know if you know this, but under our guidelines, you could get like 38 chiropractor visits. And if you can get the chiropractor to come to where your loved one is, chiropractors are trained to do adjustments for elderly. They're also trained to do adjustments in a chair. And over time, part of what is causing behaviors in your loved one is easily that their spine and hip have worked out of place due to ambulation changes and due to the disease. So you can do that to know that you're making your loved one feel better. Short walks, watching to make sure they're not getting overheated and that you've got hydration ready. Fidget blankets, you can look on Etsy, you can look on Amazon. My book, Untangling Alzheimer's, actually has a layout in there of how to make a fidget blanket that I learned from a pastor's wife, and I thought it was just the most brilliant thing I'd ever seen. Stuffed animals, and Chris, they have stuffed animals now that move and look real. I've had to back up in a community because I wasn't sure if that was an actual dog I saw in there or not. Baby dolls, people with dementia are the only ones allowed to have baby dolls because they're going backwards in time as those dendrites die and they go back to the beginning. And Chris, a few weeks ago, a friend of mine sent me a picture of her 11-month-old granddaughter, and the 11-month-old granddaughter was hugging and holding and patting a little baby doll. So that behavior is something that starts. Baby dolls are actually one of the first toys we give babies. Stuffed animals, and if you're going to put them in a memory box, put in little stuffed animals and any kind of sensory toy. But when you're looking at sensory toys, you've got to be careful. A lot of the sensory toys are actually not made for people with dementia, but they've been marketed that way as a marketing tool. You're looking for things that are made for actual people with dementia, not bright flashing lights, not loud clanging things. So you're looking for sensory toys, but not sensory toys made for a developing, growing brain, but sensory toys made for a brain that's diseased and is dying. Activities boost self-esteem. So things like knitting or crochet, repetitive activity is soothing. Now that could be someone wants their rocking chair, or it could be somebody without a rocking chair may naturally rock and do that. And now remember, if that goes on all day, we need to check for anxiety, but otherwise a little bit of repetitive activity is actually a soothing thing, and that includes pilling, where you're rubbing the fingertips together. In the fidget box, stress balls are really good. Wind-up toys, you can find those online, or you can find them if you've got a great toy store. And then cooking boosts self-esteem, and cooking is something that we can do in a lot of different ways now. So cooking doesn't have to be I turned the oven on. Cooking could be I've got cheese and crackers, and that's what we're going to snack on. So you just want to involve your person and remember that everything you do makes them feel good. Now, you've got to have some strategies. A lot of people don't realize that it takes longer for the activity director to set up an activity than it takes to do the activity. But when we do activities, and one of the reasons why Anthem asks you so many questions about your loved one is because we need to know what kind of things they like to do so that the activity directors can build activities based on your loved one. The activities change. I mean, we're doing the same things every day. We're doing physical stuff, we're doing psychosocial stuff, we're doing spiritual stuff, we're doing interactive stuff. We're doing very similar things every day. It's just the actual task changes. So one person may love parachute ball and we play parachute ball for a while, but then another person may come along and like another game. So we're always going to try to continue to shift and move to make activities as comfortable and as enjoyable as possible for your loved one. Our activities have the goal to provide a sense of accomplishment. When I'm playing dominoes with a person with dementia, and Chris, you should know I have a reputation among people with dementia as being the worst domino player because, of course, I'm not trying to actually win. The point is to play the game, to have this sense of connection. And for the person that I'm playing with to have a sense of accomplishment because dadgummit, they beat me again. It should be emotionally nurturing. So these are not things that we're doing to punish people. These are things we're doing to have fun. It should provide social connection. There should be a lot of using of your loved one's name so that they're stay familiar with that name for as long as possible. And one of the constant social connection things that we can do over and over and over is shake hands, give hugs. Remember, this is the least touched population are people with dementia. It helps maintain skills. And remember, a firm handshake, Chris, says that I can trust you. A weak handshake says that you're shifty and I should pay attention. So using just a firm handshake multiple times while you're visiting is actually an activity. It's a psychosocial activity, and it's very important. So if you're going to bring the activity, remember to think about all the things you're going to need for your loved one to be able to do, because as we get into holidays, you may have special things you want to do with your loved one. As we get around birthdays or other things, you may have other things you want to do. So as we get closer to Passover and Easter, you may have things you want to come and do with your loved one, and come and do those things. Just remember to bring all the stuff that you're going to need. Now, communication is a huge part of being able to give a person with dementia purpose, especially as the disease progresses, especially as the dendrites die, as the pearls go away, as the root of that neuron becomes shorter and shorter, more and more memory is lost and the brain is more damaged. So remember your communication tips. Limit noise. They may not enjoy going for rides anymore. It's too much visual stimulation coming at them. Watch your person to see that they're understanding you to the best they can. It shouldn't be long, giant run-on sentences the way I speak. It should be short sentences with a lot of repetition. 90% of our communication with one another is body language. It's our pitch and our tone of voice. I have to remember to go slowly, to speak slowly, and to give the person time to answer. And remember, that's 15 seconds is the general rule of when I'm going to need to give them that much time to answer my question. You don't want to overwhelm anyone, and you got to make sure your approach is correct and you're coming from the front and you're aware that there are visual changes or hearing changes. And it may not be, Chris, that the person needs a hearing aid. It's that because of brain damage here and here, they're not translating language, speech, or sound correctly. That's a brain issue, not a hearing issue. So we've got to be aware of these sensory changes. Now, three things that we are doing, to move this just a second. The three things that we're doing when we're doing activities is we're focused a lot on motor skills. Because while they are still able to ambulate and still able to safely move their body, we want to do little dancing. We want to do walking. We want them to do their ADLs or activities of daily living for as long as possible. And then we're going to help them by putting our hand underneath their hand as they do their activities of daily living. And then again, serving food and drinks. It's a motor skill, but it's also a psychosocial skill. It's a human skill. If you came to my house, I would offer you food and drink. We're doing things that involve sensory skills. So we're listening to conversations or music or birds, smelling things, tasting things, and you've always got to remember vision and hearing. Cognitive skills such as counting, reading aloud, and sorting items. So if you come into Anthem and you see people folding washcloths, those are not the building's washcloths. That is the activity department's washcloths, and when they're finished, they'll put them up and then they'll do that again later. It's an important thing for humans to do, and it helps fill the need of being human. Now, we did, Anthem has on their YouTube website, which is Anthem Memory Care on YouTube, they have an entire episode that we did on communication and dementia because of how complex it is. Jamie's going to link it to this so that you'll be able to find the two of them together, because a lot of what we're doing and a lot of what you can do with your person involves being able to communicate. Now, as you go through, if you're having a hard day, you don't need to come visit your loved one. You always got to keep your frustration in check. If you're feeling overwhelmed, call us. We'll talk to you. But people with dementia pick up on your mood. So if you're angry, frustrated, agitated, mad, then so are they. And the difference is it's very difficult for them to regain back to their balance. So if you're frustrated, that's normal. If you're scared, if you feel guilty, if you're grief stricken, all of those things are normal. And you can call any one of our communities and somebody will be there to talk to you and help you. And it's another reason why it's critical you be in support groups, that you follow the education that Anthem gives, because we're all simply trying to do the best we can to give your person the best life possible. When you're visiting, be curious. That's another part of being purposeful, is to be curious. It's good for her. It's good for you. You don't talk to her as the person that she used to be. You talk to her as the person she is now. My mother doesn't know she's a great grandmother with 24 great grandchildren. So we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about where'd she grow up and who's her daddy. What's her favorite things to do at school? We're going to go where she is now in her memory, and we're going to talk about those things because those memories are still there. And if I'm curious, Chris, I can learn something about my mother nobody else knows. I can have a friendship or a relationship or a moment in time that stays with me until the end of my days. Your social skills are key. Remember, humans, when we visit with each other, have stuff to eat or drink. So have a cookie, have tea, flowers, music, movies, food. Talk to her about her beautiful eyes, her beautiful hair, her smile, her hands. I make an effort at every community to compliment every person with dementia I meet, because who among us doesn't like to have somebody say, hey, you look really good today? When you make that positive memory, hold it on tight, put it in your journal, put it in your gratitude journal, and be excited that what you did today was so powerful and had so much meaning that it made a memory for you. And it's a good thing to have. Remember that we all need things to look forward to. And Chris, that doesn't mean we need to take her to a wedding. Okay. I had a lady call me once and her mother was my patient, and the lady is almost 100, and the wedding was over an hour away from her community where she went to bed every night at 6, and the wedding doesn't start till 7. And if you can't hear trouble brewing here, you should. The granddaughter insisted they bring the grandmother, even though no one had been assigned to take care of her or to watch over her. And the granddaughter wanted her in the video. She wanted her in the pictures. And at about 7:15, Grandma had had enough, and she stood up and cussed out everybody in the church and left. Now, she didn't get very far. They put her in a car and took her back, but we still need things to look forward to. We need to include your loved one as much as possible. And when they're no longer capable of going to that thing needs to still come towards them, whether it's pictures, flowers from the event, some of the food that you had there, and the little girl in the ballerina outfit. Who wouldn't want to see her come and visit? Right, Chris?
That's right.
So remember on your loved one, they're truly ill. The brain doesn't know it's sick. They're not in denial. They're not faking it. They're not pretending. There truly are valleys and plateaus in the disease process. The slowing up and speeding up of loss, those are normal things. Everything that your loved one is doing with the disease process is normal. And Chris, everything everybody listening to us feeling is also normal. Remember your lobes. Okay, and if you need, you can go back and look at a video on the lobes. Each of these lobes does certain things, and when they're damaged, the person is then going to begin to do much different things. Now, in graduate school, I had a research project that I had to do, and my research project was actually on this topic. And what I had to do was go to a skilled setting, a nursing home. And I went to the home that I had been the social worker in for 5 years, Chris. So I knew the people in the community, I knew the owners, and they were wonderful to help us with this project. What we did was we gave every single person in the community, including the people in memory care, a bottle. It is literally was a Coke bottle with a stick of ivy in it. And you have to understand, Texas ivy doesn't necessarily look like y'all's ivy. Y'all have pretty cool ivies up there. We have the basic ivy that they stick in your plant at the florist. That's pretty much it. And all the person had to do in the research project, all we asked them to do is that when I came by, I went to every room and spoke to every person about their ivy plant and what had they done with it today and when was the last time they'd add water to the bottle. And to the dementia people, we had to, work with each one differently based on their level of decline. And it turned out that it's exactly what everybody finds when they do this research. Every person, regardless of their cognitive ability, needs to be needed. And something as simple as you're responsible for this little ivy in this little jar makes a big difference to someone. So, how can all of the things that your teams do on a daily basis for the residents not count even more? Since then, I have, Chris, in my career, I have, my business has put gardens into 7 different skilled facilities so that people had gardens because they're also considered spiritual. But the, the research over and over again, even if you repeated what I did with the ivy, you would find out it's the same. We all need to be needed, even if to the outsider, sorting black socks and white socks doesn't seem like a big thing, it is to a person with dementia. And maybe to someone who doesn't know, folding washcloths seems silly and ridiculous, but it's not to a person with dementia. And so you have to remember that as we go along, as we do our jobs, and as we provide care for your loved ones. Does that all make sense, Chris?
Sure does.
Now, I want to do a couple of other things for you before we go to questions. This is just a little blurb about the hippocampus. And remember, the hippocampus is that piece in the middle of the brain. And once it's destroyed, that's usually stage 5 of the disease. And you know it's been destroyed because now the person is repeating everything. And it's enough that you're noticing now that it's gotten much, much worse. It's not occasional. It's not once a day. It's now a constant thing. It means that this thing no longer exists. And I actually thought about reading you what this says, but I'm not even certain that I can pronounce all of the words in here. But this is explaining to you how the hippocampus has a function and sends information to another part of the brain. So it just gives you an idea of, to me, Chris, why your person can do something one moment and not the next. And then why is that memory back again, but now it seems gone? And it's just because of how complex the brain is and how it's actually over what you need to be able to survive. Your brain and my brain operated above 100% capacity. Now, I want to teach you a couple of things because, as always, I know this information is hard to hear. So this is a track of the vagus nerve. It is the 8th cranial nerve. It is the nerve that brings more information back to the brain than any other nerve in the body. And the vagus nerve, when you and I get upset, the vagus nerve releases cortisol, which is our stress chemical. Our heart begins to pound, our blood pressure goes up, our stomach begins to churn, and then we have diarrhea. And it's because that's the connection of the vagus nerve. And those are the areas the vagus nerve is responsible for. So, Chris, if you're coming to visit and you feel a little stressed, put one hand on your forehead. And if everybody listening could do this, put one hand on your forehead, put the other hand over your heart, shut your eyes and breathe. And Chris, in just 2 to 3 to 4 breaths, you should feel an immediate connection that occurred that made you feel calmer because the act of putting your hand on your forehead and the other hand over your heart tells your vagus nerve to signal the autonomic nervous system that everything's okay. So your heart calms down and your stomach calms down. Now you can keep one hand on your forehead. You can also put your hand over your stomach. Your stomach is just below your rib cage. It's not down at your bladder. It's not at your kidneys, just below the rib cage. Same thing. Shut your eyes and breathe. And these little tricks, which I just love, are fabulous because, Chris, in only a few seconds, it can help you calm down. And as a family caregiver, as a professional caregiver, it's something that I think we all need in our little toolbox of ways to keep us calmer. So I'm ready for questions. And I hope that made sense.
Of course it did.
If you have a question, you can type it in the chat, or you can raise your hand and we'll make sure your mic is on. We've also put a couple of things in the chat for you. So while you're thinking of your question or you're looking to raise your hand, if you're in the Denver area, Dr. Tam, she will be she will be with us live and in person for a full day workshop, which is graciously being sponsored by Anthem Memory Care and Bloom Healthcare out of the Denver area, along with many other sponsors who will be there to share their resources with you as well. If you attend, you get a copy of the Itty Bitty Dementia book and a resource-filled tote bag and a lovely lunch catered by Anthem. So the information is there in the chat for you. Scan the QR code if you can attend, or call to RSVP, the number's there. I've also, Dr. Tam, I think I put the right YouTube video in the chat, but we'll also send it, we'll also be able to send it out to folks who have RSVP'd. Was it the effective approaches for communication?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So
that's the one, because
take note of that one.
Yeah, when you have better techniques for communication, we're more successful doing all of the activities. And the more you share with us about your person's loves and interests, the more we're able to fine tune and just make a better day for them. You know? And
That's
that, I
wonderful.
think, is what so many of us want. We just want to go to sleep tonight knowing they had a good day.
Yeah.
They had a good day.
Okay, Steve, I think your mic should be working. Steve Strain.
Hello there. Yeah, we're having a little watch party here at the community. Hi,
Hey,
Dr.
Steve.
Tam.
How are you?
Good, good. Kelly is here that you remember from Wichita, and she's got another partner here. But Kathy, one of our spouses, has a question.
You betcha.
Yes, Doctor, thank you for your generous gift of your presence. I had a question. I was reading about research by Richard Isaacson. He was talking about there being a blood test for biomarkers, amyloid and p-tau 217. He was talking about ways that we might be able to ameliorate some of the Alzheimer's. If we have these biomarkers, there's a simple blood test that we could take with that. Have you heard anything about that?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am, but there's so much research that's going on. You might look at nih.gov to see if anybody else is looking at what Mr. Isaacson is looking at, and see if there's anything there. So you might find some information about that. We do know at present that 70% of your aging is not genetics, it's how you've lived your life. Do you take care of your body? Do you eat good foods? Are you a big drinker, or are you not a drinker? Are you a smoker? Are you not a smoker? Are you overweight, or you take care of yourself? That 70% of your aging is based on how you live your life. 10% is luck. You didn't get run over by a bus or have something terrible happen to you. And then 20% is actually genetics. In the identical twin studies, where one of the twins has Alzheimer's, what's really not understood is there's only about a 60% chance the other identical twin develops Alzheimer's. So we do know, while genetics is certainly a key component, and they'll continue to look at that, there are all sorts of other theories that are floating around. There's been a discovery that the Huntington's dementias may actually be present, and if the virus increases enough, then the person will develop Huntington's, and if it doesn't, they become the carrier of Huntington's. So there's all sorts of different research going on looking at the genetics of it. It's just, it comes back to how complex the brain is and how complex this disease is. So yeah, great question.
Yep, that's a great one. And thank you guys for being at that watch party together. It's great to have that support. Sue has two great questions in the chat, so I'm going to give them both to you. Are we able to calm a loved one using the forehead and heart technique? I guess if we use our hands on their head and their heart.
No, because we're more likely to have them smack us. I mean, if I came up to you, Jamie, and said, here, do this, but you might, and that would be interesting to see. So Steve, if you'll let me know what happens in your community, I think let's see if we got one of them to mirror what we were doing, if we would notice that that it helped them, because you could tell it should give you immediate, within just a few seconds, it should help you feel calm. But I don't know of anybody that's tried it with a person with dementia, but I think we should.
And her second question, I've wondered this myself. My loved one speaks in word salad. Do they understand us, even if we don't understand them?
No, the assumption is that the areas of the brain that are involved with language and speech are both under attack. And I remember from graduate school in stage 5, we believed that they understood about 8 out of 10 words at the beginning of stage 5. And, that's not great, but most communication, remember, is done by body language and tone and pitch of voice. And then in stage 6, it's believed that they understand 1 out of 10 words. So there's a tremendous amount of change in what they're understanding. But once they begin to go to word salad, I'm now watching their facial emotions to see, are they telling me something happy and I should be laughing with them and going, oh yeah, I see. Or are they telling me somebody's in trouble and I should be going with them? Are they telling me they don't feel good? Are they telling me they're a little scared right now and maybe just need to have literally me say a little prayer with them? That's something, especially for this older generation, just a few words of prayer really are things that'll be calming to a person.
Okay, the next question is, this is interesting. My husband used to love to write pages and pages of troop movements where he was thinking of a particular battle and he would do things differently than the original military commander. He
Yeah,
used to love
military
making
history.
maps.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
So
they did he collect the little soldiers and set up the battlefields? Even go
So
that far?
she says he's never liked playing games, so she brought in military history books with pictures, but he doesn't seem interested in them, and she's at a loss for activities to bring him.
Well, for your husband, I would think about the man I knew who was the piano player, and he had been the pianist at a major place in Washington, D.C., and that was his job. He went there every day and played the piano while people shopped. And when he moved into memory care, his children brought his piano with him, and he'd play his piano every day. And then one day you realize that he was beginning to mix the melodies of one song with the melodies of another song. And then you realized he was playing chords and scales. And then you realized he tapped on the piano, and then he never noticed the piano again. And so it may very easily be that your husband simply lost not simply, but the pieces of his brain that held that military history hobby that he had, that those are no longer there. And so you're at a loss of what to do with him. So then I always fall back on food. Okay, because if I'm going to come visit, I'm going to bring a donut or cookies or something. We're going to have something, because then I know that I had this time with him where he was doing something that he really enjoyed. I gave him a few more calories. It wasn't painful, and I know that I made him happy. And I think that's probably what you're looking at, is how can you do things to make him feel happy? And there's a point in the disease where happiness is that I'm warm, I'm dry, and my tummy is full.
Yeah,
And,
thank you.
and they're giving me tasty things.
She said in follow-up that yes, she brings him brownies or cookies. Thank you.
And now, what day do you visit? Because I'll be coming to see Steve again, and I'll need to know that for my cookie.
I'm not sure where Leslie is. We have a Teresa who says, you mentioned in an earlier presentation how folks with high IQ can present with no or low dementia for longer. Please speak to this.
That is a process called cognitive reserve. And what it means is that the person is smarter than average. So the average IQ is between 95 and 105, and the mean is therefore 100. The testing materials for people with dementia, the paper test, the different ones that they might take, those are made for people whose IQ is 100. But what if your person's IQ was 150? We don't have a test for that. So you're telling the doctor what you're seeing, because you know this is not how your person normally acts, and you can see these declines. But when your doctor goes to look at the test, your loved one is able to pass the test because a higher intellect brain thinks more analytically, and something about that analytical process and the thickness and the richness of the dendrites of your loved one mean that the disease moves slower in the beginning, but by the time they're finally diagnosed and noticed by professionals that they're sick, the disease speeds up because they actually have more brain damage than the person of average intelligence. And that's the effect of cognitive reserve. They had enough cognition that they could continue to appear as normal to others. Now, remember, when you say that, it doesn't mean they're doing this intentionally. It's us not recognizing that that person has dementia. Okay? They're not doing it on purpose. And so as the process continues, you then begin to see that it would appear that all of a sudden your loved one has dementia, and it's very, very severe, and they seem to be declining more rapidly. And that is what we anticipate in people who've had the effect of cognitive reserve. Did that make sense?
Seems like
Sure
it
did.
did. There's a question from Anne. She'd like to know if having a hard time coming up with words when talking is an early sign of dementia. And does type 2 diabetes also set you to get dementia or impact maybe getting dementia? And if this is Anne is 55, and she'd also like to know any other tests available to check for early signs of dementia. And I know you will speak to that.
Okay. So the first one is
Word finding
It is-
problems.
it is not normal to have word finding problems at age 55. Now, there could be 100 things that are making you have or making this person have those feelings. Stress, lack of sleep, vitamin deficiency, depression, anxiety. I mean, there's just a number of things, and we probably all have them: stress, anxiety, and depression. And so I would want you to be seen at probably one of the universities, medical schools that do the testing. I'm not sure where you are, but if you'll call the Anthem in that area, they'll know where to tell you to go for testing. They'll be looking at this person for frontal temporal dementia. The website for that is theaftd.org. It stands for the Association of Frontal Temporal Dementia.org. When you go on the website, click on what is FTD. go to primary progressive aphasia and read those 3 forms of communication disorder to see if those look familiar to what you're seeing in your loved one. Because of the person's age, they're going to move very quickly because unusual for you to be having something happen. And so they're going to move quickly to find out what it is, because we're used to 85, not 55. So let's get that checked out as soon as possible and see what's going on with you or your person. Okay, what was the other part of that?
What part might diabetes play in
Oh,
dementia?
diabetes makes everybody's dementia worse. Diabetes interferes with the blood-brain barrier, and the blood-brain barrier is how the brain is cleaning itself at night. And diabetes interferes with that. It just makes the whole process worse. And then your loved one's craving sweets, but you're afraid to give them something because they're also diabetic. And so it makes their care more complicated, and it tends to impact the disease a little more severely. It makes the disease worse, no matter which dementia they have. And it's because of what diabetes is doing in the brain.
All right. Do we have any additional questions? I don't see any other hands raised at the moment.
I'm curious, was anybody surprised as to how much planning, theory, education, and work go into what look like simple activities? Did you have any idea what the staff has to know and understand? Because I always think people are shocked that it's not just bingo. Does that make sense, Jamie?
Yeah, it certainly does. And it's very important for us to know so much about each resident so that our purpose in finding their purpose is driven by everything that we can learn about them.
Absolutely. And
I had
it
about a
may,
million questions to ask the lady with the husband with the soldiers because I'm wanting to learn a whole lot more about him
Mhm.
to figure out what we might be able to do to engage.
Yeah, and they do. I mean, there are people don't realize it. Our military has military colleges. They have the war college is a real thing where they go and go over great battles. Our generals study the great battles. There's people who have entire rooms set up where they move little toy soldiers into places and replay those battles, and how would they do it differently. At our military bases, we have large simulators of tanks. And to me, it's the greatest video game anybody could ever want. It's an actual tank that you're climbing into, and it's on hydraulics, and they can plug into you, and you can be the tank will move and the screens will show as though you're in California or on the other side of the world. And they're able to have battles and then get out and go back to the classroom and see what they did wrong and then go back and get their little tank and do it again. So people have studied military stuff probably as long as people have fought. So I think that is fascinating too. I had the same thoughts, Jamie, of what did this guy do? So
Yeah.
yeah, and even if it's something like my fellow loves brownies, let us know. Let us know, because we're gonna make sure he always has that brownie.
And we have a lot of folks who are introduced to new things that may not have been something that they had ever tried or experienced. I think about people who are introduced to painting and are doing some painting in the community, and families like, we didn't know she had any interest in painting. And when we bring in the baby goats, chances are most people there haven't had a lot of playtime with baby goats before, but they love it. It's a
Eh,
great engagement. Hey, Steve has his hand up again. Steve,
Oh,
another question
but
from the group?
hang on, Steve, for
Uh-huh.
just a second. Jamie, actually, in the frontal temporal dementia primary progressive aphasia communication group, they begin to do incredible pieces of art during the disease. And it's people that have
Um,
never done art before. And it may be, I've seen somebody who was carving wood. Of course, that scared me to death. But painting, pottery, just any art, writing, artistic things that have never been seen, like you said, by the family
mhm,
before. And it's
mhm.
actually part of a dementia. So really, really
Interesting.
strange. Okay, back to
Interesting.
Steve.
Dr. Tam, somebody here in our group is going to be in Colorado. So could you or somebody speak to where specifically and when you'll be up there again in the Denver area?
Jamie?
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Tam is going to be in the Littleton, Colorado, which is a suburb of Denver, if you're familiar with that. And the event is taking place on April the 24th it's being hosted at Sky Point Retirement Resort. And RSVP to that event 720-619-8219. We're going to check in at 8:30. We'll have the full day with Dr. Tam, and we'll have some sponsors there with resources, and lunch is included. There's no charge for any part of this event.
Thank you. And then Kelly in our group had a question for Dr. Tam.
Hello, wonderful Dr. Tam. How are you?
I'm good, ma'am. How are you?
I'm good. Hey, I've just wanted to ask you about falling asleep is something that Scott is doing quite a bit more. He's sleeping a lot more now. And I woke up in the morning and found him standing in the kitchen asleep. And I think almost think he's been there for quite a while. He was leaning up against the counter a bit, so I think that's what was holding him up. But I'm pretty sure had been there for a while. But I've caught him sleeping while he's standing up, like literally snoring.
Right. What concerns me is that he's doing that at home and you weren't aware he was out of the bed, right?
Right.
And that's scary. And I can't imagine how alarmed you must have been to see him standing and snoring.
Yes.
And was he ever a sleepwalker?
No, as a matter of fact, he never slept well.
Well, their sleep pattern changes. They begin to sleep more and more. They get up in the night and wander, which is what makes them. It's one of the reasons the family caregiver can't get any rest because he's up. It's why memory care staff is awake all night long because people are up. So we need them to have somebody to talk to. I would just run that by his doctor, given the unusual that he was standing and sleeping, but and I'd keep an eye on him. Was there anything unusual that happened or anything weird? But the sleeping, they get up and move in the middle of the night. Men especially get up and try to get ready and go to work in the middle of the night. So you may just be seeing a normal progression of the disease process. I would double check it with the doctor though, just because the leaning against the wall and sleeping is a bit unusual.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh. Yeah, nobody wants to talk.
Let's see. We had just a comment. Great presentation. Can we get a copy of this presentation? This will be posted to the Anthem YouTube channel. I'm not sure if you meant the video or the actual slides, but both of the slides are within the video, and the video will be on our YouTube channel, the Anthem Memory Care YouTube channel. And then there's a question from Christine. My father and I have come to the decision that a facility is the right place for mom. We've narrowed our choices to a few. Can you speak to what you feel are the 5 most important things to consider in making a selection?
Well, so good for you and your dad, because this is the hardest thing a person has to do. And keep holding on to, you are making a medical decision. You're not abandoning anyone. You're not being ugly. You're making a medical decision because this is a medical disease. Research shows people get better care in communities because they're licensed and they're trained to look for delirium and UTIs. And if somebody falls down, they're right there. So hard decision to make. Everybody here knows it. So good for y'all. Good for you and your dad doing this and hanging in there together. Just keep remembering for him that it's a medical need. for your mom. I start when I drive into the parking lot of a community. I'm looking to see what the cars look like. Do they pay their staff enough that their staff is able to drive a good car? And that's the first thing I'm looking for, is how are they treating their staff? Because if they're treating their staff well, they're treating their people well. I go in, I'm looking for how the place looks, how the place smells, how the feeling is. Does the staff look at me? Do they smile? Do they greet me? Do the residents look clean and cared for? Are they in clean clothes? Are their wheelchairs clean? Are their ears, fingernails, faces properly shaved? Women don't have whiskers. Do the people look well cared for? I want to see what the food looks like. You can ask any community to hand you their licensing exam, and without batting an eye, they'll hand you their licensing exam. And the other thing is that I'm fortunate enough that I get to choose who I work for and who I will speak for. And I speak for Anthem because I believe in what they do. I know their owners, I know their vice presidents, I know their people, and they do just a tremendous job. And it's the reason that I will speak for them. And so start at the front of the building, go all the way through, come at a lunch, and talk to a family that's there. And the staff will be happy to help you. So don't be nervous about anything. Okay? Or maybe not, Jamie. She may have run away.
We actually do have a white paper on the Anthem Memory Care website that goes into what you should look for on a tour and how to look for memory care. It's something that can be a resource no matter where you're looking or which communities you're looking at. So take a look at that. Or
Well, and it helps you realize you've made a good decision.
yeah. And Christine,
know?
if you would like us to send you a copy of that, just reach out to your local Anthem and we'll get it to you. We're really here to be a resource. Is there any other question out there for Dr. Tam?
I know so many things. I know it's cold in parts of the country, flooding in parts of the country, 96 in Texas.
All right. Looks like we have come to the conclusion of Q&A. We really appreciate the time that we've had with you, Dr. Tam. We do have these webinars once a month. We have a few various speakers this year. We didn't get to hog up all of Dr. Tam this year. Oh, Christina is back with a question. I think I've allowed your mic now. Christina, are you able to unmute? Okay, well, let's go back to the chat real quick and see if we have a question there. Are you speaking in any other parts of the country, anywhere in the Midwest? They're looking for your tour schedule, Dr. Tam.
Wichita, Steve, Cleveland with Amanda.
Yes, Wichita, September the 5th.
September the 5th.
Yes.
That's my mean big sister's birthday.
Oh, are you bringing her?
No. We'll
Kathy,
be leaving her in Texas. Yes.
Kathy in our group actually had another question.
You bet.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what I'm trying to find out, but I wanted to know about assessing pain in someone with dementia. I know you'd use the facial the expressions, the physical, that they might not be able to say, yeah, I'm feeling pain or this is where it is, but they can give you other clues as to what what's going on, but is there a physiological reason why someone might have increased or decreased pain sensitivity?
Well, yeah, it's because the brain is damaged enough that they can now act out their pain. So the tool that you're looking for, Steve will show it to you. It's in the back of the itty bitty book, or he'll print one off for you. It's called Pain Ad. It's all capital letters, PAINAD. It stands for Pain Assessment in Advanced Dementia. Page 1 is where you're actually scoring your person, how they're breathing, vocalizing, moving, fidgeting, whether or not they can be consoled. Page 2 is telling you what is meant by the medical terms on your scoring page, page 1. So it's called Pain Ad. You can Google it. It's in the itty bitty book, or it's on my website in the tools section.
Yeah, so, but is there a physiological?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Because of brain damage, you no longer
Yeah.
pretend you don't have pain.
Well,
And
but
every
don't
day,
feel pain. Is it that you don't feel it as much?
no, ma'am, you feel pain right now, but because of a 3-pound brain, you're able to compress your pain, ignore your pain, and not pay attention to it. With brain damage, a person begins to act out their pain, usually behaviorally. So they might suddenly hit someone or kick someone or punch someone without any provocation, but it's actually untreated chronic pain. And untreated chronic pain, the pain that comes from living a lifetime, is 50% of the causation of behaviors in people with dementia. So as the brain becomes damaged, the person no longer has that cushion around controlling their pain. And all your life, you've been told not to tell anyone you're in pain. You've been taught to hide pain, not to admit to pain.
Yeah.
And like you picked up on right away, we can't ask that person, do they have pain? They have brain damage, right? And you picked up right away that you knew you were going to be looking at facial expression and vocalization. So you've named 2 of the 5 things we're looking at. So the pain ad will make a lot of sense to you, but it
But
begins.
they're gonna still feel pain.
Yes,
They'll feel it.
yes,
Right? Okay.
yes, yes. So if they have arthritis, they hurt every single day, and they hurt worse when storms are coming. Okay. And before, if it was a guy, he's been taught all his life to never have pain. But what the wife might have noticed is all of a sudden he's real cranky and real agitated. And what you're watching is untreated pain. Then you have to realize that every decade of life gives you more pain. I never broke a bone until I was 50, and now I've had multiple fractures. Not a lot of young people have arthritis, but a lot of older people sure do. And bursitis and tendonitis and old breaks and old hits. And it's the cumulative effect over time added with brain damage. And so if I no longer have to pretend I don't hurt, then you see my pain and my behaviors. And when you read the pain ad, that'll make a lot of sense to you because you picked up on so much of it already.
Very good question.
Great question.
I think we answered the tour question. August 14th in Cincinnati. Talk to Amanda about that, and she will get you all the details. And then there was one last question I missed earlier. It says, for those who are neurodivergent, is there a different recommended approach in helping to develop a purposeful plan?
I have no idea what neurodivergent even means. I've not heard that term.
That was from, excuse me, let me go back, from Angela Jackson.
I've never heard of that term. So I'm
Autistic or maybe even introverted.
okay. So what is the question?
Is there a different recommended approach in helping to develop a purposeful plan? So
I'm
if an
not
autistic
aware-
individual
I'm
has
not
dementia.
aware of an autistic person who's developed dementia. That's not been identified yet as a causation or a dementia.
Interesting.
So I haven't said that, and neurodivergent isn't a medical term. So I'm not sure how much research there will be on it, but I would definitely look at NIH.gov, National Institutes of Health.gov, and look up to see if anybody in the search bar put in neurodivergent research and neurodivergence and dementia and see if anybody's looking at anything like that, because we're certainly learning more things about it. And I think a lot of times, Jamie, when we see families that have an autistic person, they get very concerned because some of the behaviors are so very, very similar, but it's because they're similar areas of the brain that are having different things happen to them
Mhm.
chemically. And
Okay.
in the case of the person with dementia, it's actual brain death that's occurring. So I'm frequently asked, can a person with autism develop dementia? Thus far, that hasn't happened that anybody is aware of that I know. But I think it's a great question, and I've not heard the term neurodivergent, but I would look on NIH.gov just because it's the repository of research. And that would be, I think, a good place to start. Then I'm going to do some research too and see if I can find something. But in terms of does a person with autism develop dementia, as far as we know, no.
Okay. And if you do find anything, Angela is at Vineyard Place in Murrieta, California.
Awesome. And then the other thing is people can be introverted or extroverted, and it doesn't mean one's going to cause dementia or has a higher probability of dementia. Introverted people a lot of times just are people that recognize that they need quiet time to sort of reboot themselves. Our world is very stressful, and the world that the kids are living in today is much more stressful than what I grew up with. And I grew up expecting a nuclear war any day because I was raised near our largest military post. So these kids grow up much more stressful. A lot of different things going on. Our foods are different, our exercise is different, society is different. And so, great question, but I'm not aware of that happening to anybody yet.
All right. I think we're at a stopping point. Thank you again for all of your time. Thank you to everyone who has attended this evening, whether you're a caregiver, a family member, one of our Anthem family, just an interested person. We really appreciate that you are joining in this conversation and everyone is becoming better informed about the topic.
And great questions, Jamie.
Yeah.
Great questions.
Appreciate that so much. And we will hope to see everyone again next month. And we hope to see many of you in Denver.
Yes. Yeehaw. I'm bringing something from Texas, like a
Woohoo!
cow, maybe a cow or a goat.
Or a cowboy
Thank
hat.
y'all. Everybody have a good evening. Take care
Good
of
night.
yourselves. Bye-bye.